Deputy President Paul Mashatile is delivering a keynote address at the launch of Principles and Guidelines for the Use of Digital and Social Media in African Elections today. And this document seeks to create awareness amongst election management bodies on the threats that online platforms are posing to the electoral process and its integrity. Social media expert Magriet Groenewald joins us for more. Magriet, good morning to you and welcome. Let's start by setting the context. How rampant is the proliferation of global disinformation campaigns? Magriet, are you there? Can you hear me? And I'm starting off by asking how rampant the proliferation of global disinformation campaigns are.
It is absolutely a very big problem, but we see it is a worldwide problem. It's not only in developing countries, but if we look at countries like the United States and all the chaos they had with their social media, and we think of, the Analytica scandal. So we have to understand that social media does play a very pivotal part in elections, both for campaigning, but then the difficult thing is the spread of misinformation and disinformation. And the thing here that happens is disinformation is there to actually spread false information. So that is kind of information that is planted by bigger bodies outside of the system. But then there are the people on the ground and they receive this information, and that is what we call misinformation. And they spread it amongst themselves without knowing that it's actually false information. So that awareness that you were talking about, getting people aware of the dangers, every single citizen, because it's really something that, not even first world countries know how to handle this.
So how can people verify or identify false information? You think about the advent of AI too. It's just so much harder to tell, Magriet.
Absolutely. So if we look at what has happened in the past, for instance, in Uganda, we saw that a lot of fake profiles were made of government officials. So it's very important for people to understand that you sort of have to view information with that discernment of not trusting everything you see. So it's also important for official bodies to have their accounts verified. And for people to understand that anyone can put a picture and say a name, anyone can present themselves to be someone else. So definitely make sure when you take in information, it is verified sources like news channels or verified newspaper reports. So the thing here is people receive messages on WhatsApp, and a lot of the time it's got fear. It's fear-based messages, and they just spread it on. So I always try to tell people, just pause for a moment and think, because when you are in that fear moment, you are just spreading the chaos. You are just spreading that fear. So make sure it is each person, each citizen's responsibility to make sure not to share information that is not verified. And it's as easy as going to the internet and typing, is this the truth? Because most of these messages that get shared on social media, you can go to a fact finder and it will tell you it's absolutely false information.
Yeah, it's about taking that one step between, reading and acting. As you say, just take a pause. Everyone, if you're receiving something on WhatsApp or seeing something that purports to be credible, especially on social media, as Magriet is saying, is this true? And then just attach either the headline, the image, or whatever the content is, and you can come up with some results quite quickly. So the INC has launched, Magriet, an online reporting platform for digital disinformation, and this is in conjunction with the now well-known Media Monitoring Africa to allow people to complain about it. Just share with our viewers how it works.
Yeah, so basically if you find, and this is on all platforms, so we look at all the social media platforms, you can simply let them know. But what is very important here is what we don't realize is a lot of people use homegrown disinformation. This is where they make use of social media influencers. Now, we trust those people. We trust our influencers that we follow. But we have seen, and this is also according to, a report by Africa Center for Strategic Studies, what happened in Kenya in the 2022 elections, where Influencers were posting things on TikTok because obviously they got paid. So if there's any information that you feel might be misinformation or disinformation, first of all, pause and make sure whether it's so. And if you feel like you want to report them, you can always do that.
Yeah, and again, it's that very simple thing. I don't know where sensibility has gone, Makrit. Some people are just like the basic sensibility. Who is saying something? Are they qualified to say it? Where would they have gotten it from? Some basic questions that people need to ask, and people need to stop outsourcing their opinions. They need to be quite intentional about what they're reading, consuming, and then passing on. So it's quite serious to willfully spread false information, and perhaps not many people know that the Directorate of Electoral Offences, established a few years ago, will investigate this behavior, and there will be some punishments for this. What are you aware of in terms of action that's been taken against people who have been spreading disinformation or misinformation?
Yes, so you can go to the court cases today, and you will find many court cases. So here's the thing. This is not always talked about in the media. So what we see on social media is people sharing misinformation, people saying whatever they want, and we think we are allowed to do that. But what we do not see are the typical, like the penny sparrow cases. And I can tell you there are currently so many in the court with misinformation and disinformation and saying things about people that's simply not true. You are not allowed to do that. Just as little as a newspaper are allowed to say something that is not the truth of someone else that will harm their reputation, you are also not allowed to do it. And we don't understand, if people don't see that social media is a media platform, like a radio station, like a broadcast channel. The problem is that it is not monitored the same, but the law still applies in exactly the same space. So you are liable if you share misinformation. We know about the big case of the violence incitement that happened in Durban, and unfortunately, we never know how far these court cases go. But the point is, you don't want to be on that side of the law. So rather think. And especially if there's fear in the message and you think everyone is doing it, everyone is sharing these things, do not do that. Take responsibility for what you put out on social media.
Just then to reinforce that message of personal responsibility and the dissemination of information that you haven't been able to vet and verify for yourself. Often you talk about the fear factor. If there's a warning in the neighborhood or something's about to happen that people perceive as a threat to them, they might be more inclined to share that quickly. So walk us through a quick hygiene inventory, if you will, Makrit, on what do you do? I've just received something either on my phone, on WhatsApp, or I've seen something on X or any of the other platforms. I'm not sure what to do about it, and I'm afraid. What are the steps that people should follow?
So I have so many times just gone to the internet and just typed in this thread about, whatever is happening. And most of the time it's already there and it will tell you it's been checked. It's not a fact. It is actually fake news. Most of the things that come to us, it's sort of like already, circulated the world kind of. And, it is fake news. The other thing is just to think for yourself. A lot of the time, if you just use your own common sense, when someone is, for instance, inciting violence or saying fear-based things, you can simply just think for yourself. But one thing that is really valuable that anyone can do is to follow people with opposing views. So what I like to do is I like to follow political parties on social media with opposing views, because we get extremely polarized on social media, because remember, you only get fed what you engage with. So if you are, for instance, in one specific political party, you can become so polarized to the one side, and that is maybe not the truth. So it's always important to sort of play the devil's advocate with yourself. And unfortunately, it is your responsibility as a citizen of every country to make sure that the content you consume is actually good for you and for the citizens.
All right, so there's a lot of work, as we say, being done today. The Electoral Commission is meeting to formalize and basically create an architecture around digital dissemination of information, particularly when it comes to elections. Just had a comment from one of our viewers, from Bunu, who's saying, Margriet, how do we get credible info if most of the media is fighting for a particular world order? And we've seen this with certain media following a particular ideology or line. Again, when you see things, in the press, you assume that they're going to be credible, but we live in a world where we understand that that's not always the case. How do people then, again, even if it's coming from what appears to be, a respected source, apply their own measure and their own measurement?
So what you do is simply this. You take in that from that respective source, and then you take in information from an opposing respected source. So at least both of them are respected sources. Yes, they have their ideology, but then you can actually see from both sides where in between is the middle. Is the truth. It's somewhere in the middle, the truth lies. But if you take it just from a random person, just a person on YouTube, that is not a credible source. That's absolutely not a credible source. So that is why I say, go and follow political leaders of opposing parties. Go and read from opposing newspapers, where we know this newspaper is for that line and this newspaper for that, because in between you will find the truth. But you are definitely not going to find it from just people with opinions. That is definitely a fact.
Margriet, thank you. And it is a useful tip. Watch the two giants dukes it out on any issue using the same sets of information but different arguments, and it'll probably help evolve your understanding a little bit. So thank you for that useful tip. Social media expert Margriet Groenewald, in the context of elections and social media, some of the cautions that we need to apply when we receive or disseminate information.